This is CheloniaCast, episode 25. You can find us at theturtleroom.org/CheloniaCast, where you can learn more about our program as well as access the CheloniaCast Student Research Fund. Today, we're really excited. We've got Christel Griffioen on. She is the director of the Angkor Center for Conservation of Biodiversity, as well as Sitha Som, who works for WCS Cambodia in freshwater sort of conservation management. Both of them have done a lot of work with turtles and tortoises, specifically in Cambodia. We're really excited to talk to them today about some of the work that they do, the research, the field experiences, and kind of the turtle species that occur in this really interesting country. And thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, and hello everyone.
To get us started, we always ask pretty much the same question. What got you both interested in turtles, and then what made you pursue the more conservation route?
You want to start? Yeah.
Sorry, I can start. I can start first. I think I started working with turtles accidentally. Probably I was in the college, and suddenly there was a interesting project came to me and then saying, hey, there is there was a project on turtle research, and I was like interesting because when I was young, this part of my knowledge on turtle when I was in the rice field, in the rivers, go fishing. That's the type of the turtle is one of the animal that I normally catch with my father or a brother. So when the project came to me at the college to conduct the research for my thesis, so I think it starts from there, and it's very interesting. Thank you.
How about you, Chris? That's pretty interesting. That sort of the sort of experience in the field, right? You get out and find them when you're younger, and that kind of inspires you, right? That's sort of kind of a cool.
My story is slightly different. We don't have turtles in our ponds back in the Netherlands. But I started my career as a zookeeper, and then I came to Cambodia. I've always been interested in reptiles and in turtles, but never worked with the species. And then I came to Cambodia and started working for the ACCB. And that's where I really started working with turtles more and more, and learned more with them, and just kind of found out how cool they really are. And I wouldn't want to go back to anything else. I mean, animals are amazing, but turtles in particular are really super interesting to me.
Yeah, that's interesting that you came from sort of the Netherlands to Southeast Asia. That's got to be kind of a sort of a culture difference, right? How is it to kind of get used to that? What was that like, sort of?
There's definitely a culture difference there, but one that I embrace because I like the pace of life here. I like how in Cambodia, in Southeast Asia, people are not stressing so quickly. They're more relaxed. There might be a problem, but we'll deal with the problem, and if we don't fix it today, it's going to be fixed tomorrow. There's no need to stress so much. Whereas back in Europe and Holland, the pace of life is much faster. Everyone is stressing much more. So I prefer working in Asia, and the people here are amazing. The food is amazing. Countryside, nature is beautiful. So yeah, I like it here. It's just, you need to adjust. I mean, there's always things, and even in my team, my colleagues, I am not from Cambodia. The language is difficult. It's really hard to understand and learn to speak. And also in my day-to-day way of working, and even though I try to adjust as much as I can, I still am I grew up, in Dutch culture. I learned to work in Dutch culture, so I can't let that go completely. I am not Cambodian, but I embrace how open the people here are to learning new things as well, and how open they are accepting people from a different background.
That's really interesting. Yeah. And Christel, you mentioned the ACCB. Maybe you could talk a bit more about sort of what the ACCB focus is and what sort of research or I guess if there's sort of an ex situ. I think a lot of the projects are sort of in situ focused, but maybe you could give us sort of an overview of what ACCB does.
I can, yeah, sure. So the ACCB is a conservation center from the Allwetter Zoo in Münster in Germany. And it was established in 2003 and initially really focused on the rescue and rehabilitation of native species to Cambodia. And over the years, we've noticed and seen that need for protecting turtles. And today, our focus is very heavily on turtles and tortoises, and also on waterbird species, especially giant ibis, white-shouldered ibis, greater adjutant, and Bengal florcan for critically endangered species of birds here in Cambodia. And we still do a lot of rescue and rehabilitation, especially of those endangered, critically endangered species. But mainly our focus has shifted to ex situ management of animals. So the majority of the work we're doing is the ex situ conservation of critically endangered and endangered species, focusing mainly on turtles and the bird species I just mentioned. And then we're doing the rescue, rehabilitation, and release where possible. We focusing heavily on education of Cambodian people, national tourists, international tourists that want to see the center and the work we're doing, but also outreach and awareness of government authorities, rangers, on preliminary care of animals that are being rescued. We're working closely with the monks, the Buddhist monks, on capacity building there so that they are in a better position to share their environmental knowledge with the general public. We do education for children, school groups that want to come to the center. We would go to them if that's required. And then another section of the work we're doing is research. Research has always been a slightly smaller aspect of our work, not less important, but it's not where our expertise is. We do work with other NGOs and on the culture protection work here in Cambodia and on white-shouldered ibis monitoring as well. And now we're more and more collecting data on the turtles that we are having in captivity in our center. There are insurance colonies, measurements and incubation records that we're collecting. And also with our current reintroduction programs, implementation programs that we're looking at for turtles and that we're trying to set up, there is a heavy research aspect to that side as well. But that is really just starting, and it's going to take a little while before we're having that completely upgoing and are able to publish any of the information that we're gathering.
What species of turtles do you primarily work with?
So we currently have 9 different species of turtles at the center, all native to Cambodia. I can give the whole list, but the main species that we're focusing on is the Batagur Finnis, and that's where Sitha and I are working a lot together. So ACCB and WCS are working on that. WCS is obviously focused on ex situ breeding and assurance colony for the species, but an ACCB is having some of those animals and is having a breeding colony as well for Batagur Finnis. We are focusing on Hyoscines grandis. We have a breeding group of those We have Hoyasamis anandali, assurance not breeding yet, unfortunately. We have Indotestilo elongata, which we have a large breeding program for, and that's where WCS and ACCB are collaborating on an augmentation project for the species. First off in Cambodia, soft release. And we have Cora monensis camaroma breeding as well, and we started releasing there. And then we have several other species of leaf turtles, and we have Sibinrukiella cassicolas as well. So we have several species, but the first ones are really the ones that we're heavily focused on. Also because that's where we actually have males and females, so that helps if you want to start breeding as well. And all the animals. So yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to mention that all the animals that are at the center are coming from are rescued from the illegal trade or donated to the center. So none of the animals are being captured from the wild or any breeding programs at all. And animals that are being released back as the first generation captive born.
Well, it's interesting. You've got sort of both sides, sort of the ex situ work, but then also Sitha, you're doing more kind of the in situ side with WCS. I guess we're sort of covering a lot of different bases there, but maybe Sitha, you could tell us a little bit about kind of the work that you've been doing with WCS with turtles, and I know that a lot of that is more kind of field based, and maybe even how that kind of complements what ACCB is doing.
Yeah. Thank you. We actually, you're right. I've been working on turtle since 2004, and that's when I mentioned that when it started interest me to work in turtle. When I finished my when I at the university, I started the research on the turtle, and then I realized that turtles conservation is really a big factor. I mean, not many people know about turtles, do research about turtles, and not. I think probably I'm kind of the first one, the Khmer people conducting the research on turtle in 2004. So it was like and throughout my research, I found out that turtles are being threatened by many factors like illegal hunting and people collecting turtle for food, for consumption, for medicine, for trading. So that the kind of the information that keep me going with working with turtles. So yeah, and I started with the Cambodian Turtle Conservation Team, which was supported mainly by the Conservation Leadership Program and part of the Conservation International. And I did a lot of research on different species distributions, composition, and threats in many different locations in Cambodia. And so we just like the research mainly like just in general working to looking for example what kind of species in the cardamoms, what kind of species in the eastern plain of Cambodia, in the Tonle Sap Lake, in the Prey Long Wildlife Sanctuary. That the kind of stuff I've been working on. But and right now I am focusing on a lot on the field conservation, mainly into two critically endangered species in royal turtle, the Batagur finis, Christel just mentioned, and Asian giant social turtle along the Mekong River, the contour giant, the or we call contour giant social turtle, and that the two main species I'm been focusing on right now. But we also do have a cooperation with ACCB on the situ conservation. Like Christel mentioned that we've been working together like since more than 10 years, I think, on working up to breed and head start the Batagur finish. And I think until now it's been quite successful. We start to have a very good result from that.
It's been a very good year actually for the Batagur breeding program. So last year WCS had the first offspring, and ACCB we had eggs, but they did not hatch. And this year both WCS and ACCB had Batagur offspring, captive bred. So that was many years of work finally paying off. That was really nice to see that happen. Both facilities as well. Yeah.
That's a really interesting sort of project, and really happy to hear that it's the sort of productivity is kind of on the rise there. It's sort of similar, I guess. We were talking to Steve Platt a while back, and he's doing with the Batagur trivittata, sort of the head starting, kind of, I guess, even nest protection in the wild, but then also sort of that ex situ component where they're actually bringing the eggs in and then incubating them sort of ex situ and then releasing them. But kind of an interesting, is that sort of I guess even with the founder sort of individuals for that program, what's kind of the story behind that, if you don't mind sharing it?
Yeah, I think the Batagur Finnish conservation project I started in something early 2000, and I think Steve Platt is the one who led the research and rediscovered the species in the Srambal River system. And partly in cooperation with the government of Cambodia, the fishery administration, and I think also forestry administration. So I think it started from there. He really gave us the start point, and then it's been more than 20 years right now. Yeah.
Well,
And so in I think last year, like Christel mentioned, last year the first year we had the first hatchling from the breeding program. And I think we did really name the hatchling as Stew.
Yeah.
But I'm sure
And I think
throughout the year we have a lot of total experts from across the world, like especially from America, like Brian Horn, like Andrew Wall, and Lonnie Maskowski, and Rick Hudson coming, just helping a lot in the process. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Sitha, you know much better the number of turtles Batagur that have been released in the WCS project, but in 2016 is when the first Batagur came to ACCB from the head starting program of WCS. So before ACCB had 2 founder animals already, Batagur Finnish, but then the first head starting animals came from WCS in 2016, and those went back last year, or the males went back last year for release. So end of last year we transferred them back, and they have been released or will be released shortly. Sitha knows exactly when they are due to go. But now we're having a good breeding program going, breeding numbers, good number of females with some males at ACCB, and we have founder animals and head started animals forming that breeding population at ACCB, and the same at WCS. So there is founder animals that are also breeding, and not only head started animals. But the number of eggs that are collected from the wild or protected in the wild there's barely any nests left. Did you have any nests this year, Sitha?
You mean in the field?
Yeah, in the field.
Yeah, unfortunately not this year. So it been lucky year for our institute conservation program. Because usually we had like one or three nests per year, but unfortunately it's not this year.
It
So
just shows how
we,
important
yeah,
it
yeah.
is.
So it's really showed that the number in the wall is really not many. I mean, and we do hope that throughout the last few year release reintroduction program, we hope that those released animals will start to breed and then bring back a number of nests and hatchling in the wild. That what we are hoping for.
So that's pretty interesting. There's a paper I think that talks about kind of the conservation genetics of Batagur affinis, and in there they estimate, I believe that this is the same paper, they estimate the number of living individuals based on some sort of genomic approaches. I don't know what the current estimate of how many are currently in the wild is. Obviously that's a tough thing sort of to pin down, but and then now that you're doing kind of the head starting, you're adding a lot to that. But do you have sort of a rough estimate of how many are actually left in the Shreamble? Or?
So it's a very hard question to estimate. I mean, in the wild, because we haven't done any really population estimate really study, but in terms of what we have released them into the wild right now, we have released like 147 individuals, both male and females, and I think they will reach maturity within a few years, and but for the last few years, we estimated that probably less than 5 breeding females in the wild, and but I'm sure that this number will increase very soon, because we've been putting them a lot back into
Yeah,
the
and
wild for a few years.
the head started animals that are now in captivity, they have reached maturity, so they started reproducing. So if they do that in captivity, then it's likely that they will soon do that in the wild as well. And the animals that are in the head starting program and have been released are of similar age to the ones that stayed behind in the assurance colonies. So we should start seeing some reproductive females from those that have been head started and released.
At what age are they beginning to reproduce?
So the females that we are having at the center from the head starting program, they are born in 2006. So they are now, how old are they now then?
Something like 14, 14, 15.
No, 16. 16.
Wow.
Yeah, 15, 16, yeah.
So I think per research from Dr. Chen in Malaysia, it seemed like the wild female would reach maturity quite late in the wild than those individuals in captivity. Yeah, so I think we expect to have because we've been put them in the wild for, I think maybe they might be take some maybe a few more years less than the one in captivity.
Probably.
Yeah.
Right. They're not going to get as big as fast, and maybe that's sort of a certain size is kind of a trigger for sexual maturity, and that kind of throws things off a bit. I even wonder too sometimes, I think there was some work that was done with sliders that showed that for females that age is more of a predictor for kind of sexual maturity, whereas males it's more of a size cutoff, which that might have some sort of kind of sexual selective advantage, but that's even sort of debatable. But maybe that occurs in river terrapins. I don't know, but it's something interesting. It'd be tough, obviously, kind of to track that with the small amount that exists. How about like the sort of assurance? How many are actually in like assurance colonies? I guess maybe an estimate of how many head starts there are, or these are kind of, I guess, basic questions, but I'm just kind of curious what the current numbers are, because it's sort of hard to come across that information.
So right now we have almost 200 individuals in captivity in Kokong Reptile Conservation Center. That include those mature and the hatchlings.
And ACCB, we have way less space than WCS has. We have 11 animals in our assurance colony and our breeding program. That's what we can have space for. So maybe 200 and a little bit more than 200 animals.
Wow, that's pretty good for that's cool. That's good to hear. And how about I'm curious too about sort of the field experience in actually looking for these turtles in situ, I guess, in the wild. What is it like to come across one or to track one, and what is it sort of the full experience in the field? What's the habitat like? Is it what is that whole sort of that kind of experience in looking for them, and how does that, I don't know, kind of, that's got to be sort of a surreal thing that a lot of turtle biologists kind of dream of doing. But
so I think we have the team actively track them monthly after release, and what we are trying to look into is that we want to see where they are moving to from, for example, the soft relief pan, and then we're looking into the type of habitats. So that the stuff we have recorded. So basically, they just like to move downstream, which is mostly the mangrove habitat, and with the estuarine vegetation, brackish water, and then when mostly during the rainy season, and dry season, normally they going upstream. It because the high salinity of water push them from the sea, push them up. I don't think they can bear with the high salinity. And I think the type of habitat it consists of flooded forest, riparian forest, flooded vegetation, and of course they really like sandbanks, especially for the breeding females. Yeah, and just to mention, we found a few of the individual travel so far away from the location that we released, like almost 100 kilometer away from the release site. So it's amazing.
Well, that's an impressive amount of movement for a freshwater turtle. I had a question about the Cantor's giant softshell turtles. What is their status in the wild, and how large do they actually get in their body size, and how do you actually capture them?
Yeah, I think that after working with the giant social turtle along the Mekong River, I think that I can say that Cambodia probably holds the biggest population of this species across the country home ranks. I mean, different across many different countries for the species. And every year we protected a lot of nests. This year we got 42 nests. It consists of more than 1,000 hatchling this year. And so for example, for the last 5 years, we protected more than 4,500 hatchlings. So that's a very good number of the hatchling we have protected so far. So from 2007 until now, we protected more than 13,000 hatchlings, which is a lot compared to our Batagur finish. But it's also a lot as well compared to other countries. I think like India, a friend there just recently rediscovered the species in India, and it was so amazing, and it seemed like the population there is so low. And I hope the conservation intervention, it might be a lot better. But in terms of the how big the population of this species in Cambodia, it's really hard to say.
It's pretty interesting for the size as well as the species. There's a lot of sort of tall tails of really large softshell turtles, but when it comes to the Palacales, it doesn't seem like they get nearly as large as some of the Ketra and those other species. But do you have the size record on hand, or what is the average size of the turtles? And like Jack said, how are you actually catching them? Because small soft shells are hard enough to get. The Apollon here, I can't imagine what a 25 plus inch soft shell is like trying to get your hands on.
I think I'm not really entirely sure how big they can reach, but compared to the record they put into they put for the species, but I think the biggest one we caught in 2007, it's something like almost 80 centimeters, which is I don't know how many in
It's like 30 inches.
in
30
total,
inches, something
but
like that. That's big.
it's gigantic.
It's huge.
That's why we call him giant. But per local people, they said more than 1 meter. But I think our record say in the field guides say more around 1 meter in maximum length, I think.
Yeah, just sometimes you sort of wonder where a lot of that data kind of comes from, right? It's sort of speculative until it's really proven. But that's interesting that you've got one that's just shy of a meter. That's pretty interesting. And you said that population is pretty robust in Cambodia. Why is that? Have they not been hunted as much of an extreme, or why is it that I guess in the Mekong or just the rivers in Cambodia that they're more kind of secure, or is that just kind of speculation?
Yeah, I think our conservation program really started from 2007. So I think before that, we do have fishery administration who really their job to protect the fishery resources along the river, and that also include the turtles. So I'm sure there are a lot of illegal fishing going on there, but I think like you're right. Maybe in terms of the complication of the river, it's so large of the river, and the length of the river and the depth of the river. That the kind of thing that might be a good opportunity for the species to thrive.
I think
And
also,
yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Sitha.
I just want to add that from 2007 we've been putting a lot of efforts to conserve species. So many conservation interventions, like we supporting government to do law enforcement, the regular patrols along the species habitats. And we've been doing a lot of education to local school, to villagers, and we've been doing a lot of livelihood alternatives, like providing some livelihood uh, alternative to people to earn some money to reduce pressure to the species in the river. And we also do like like I mentioned, we have a very successful net protection program where we recruit a lot of former egg collectors to be our net protector. So and we pay them like it's not very high money if we can say that, but they really happy to. They've been we really turn them from hunter to protector, so which is very good successful for the species conservation right now. Good.
It's good.
Yeah, I was gonna just add to that because the area where the Kanto softshell turtle lives is also an area where the dolphin lives, and there's other organizations within Cambodia and the government also protecting the river for the dolphin species. So I think the turtles are benefiting from the conservation work that is actually being done on the habitat for conserving the turtles, conserving the dolphins to an extent as well. I mean, I'm convinced that without all the work that WCS would have put in since 2007, the turtle species wouldn't be having the numbers that they are now. But I do believe that just the conservation of that habitat in general for the dolphins is definitely benefiting the turtles too.
Right, that's interesting. And what sort of spatial scale are we talking about? Is this like a specific segment of this? It's the are we working the Mekong or?
So right now we our conservation program for the species is only along the Mekong River, which is it stretches across two provinces in Cambodia, and I think it's more than 50 kilometers long. That but we also have the species in other small rivers that connected to the Mekong River as well. But we have not done much research over there. But we have our collaborator from the Royal University of Phnom Penh did a research there, and then they found a few nice over there.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah, that's good. And then, Christel, you said that you have the canter soft shells at ACCB. I recall. Have you noticed anything interesting about sort of their behaviors, I guess? And because in captivity, right, you're getting kind of this window that a lot of researchers don't necessarily kind of have. What is their kind of day-to-day like?
So it's actually a species that we do not have. We occasionally get them in through rescue, and then it's often removing fish hooks. and then we release them afterwards. The center is just not set up to with the right enclosures and ponds and habitats for keeping soft shell turtles for a long period of time. They're just too sensitive, and it's not good. We can't provide them right now the welfare that they require and that they deserve. So we take them in, we rehabilitate them, and then we release them. And that's in collaboration with WCS or other NGOs that are working in that area, that are working with the communities that hear about the turtles being in need of rescue. Whenever we do receive animals, it is difficult to handle them, but we try to take measurements where we can to just collect some data. But the counters that we've received were smaller, not that large as Sitha was talking about.
We used to have some individual brought from the field, and then we did some. We put them in our few tanks, and then we did some with live camera and observation, and I think, and we found out that the species is really like to bury themselves in the sand, and it's like this mostly spend almost 95% of the time hiding in the sand. So that one of the behavior we really observe from those in captivity.
That's interesting. It makes sense, I guess. They're sort of kind of built for that morphologically. And you know, it's interesting, like the canner softshells and the river terrapins, I think that they maybe get more publicity than a lot of other species, but Cambodia is very kind of colonial rich. Maybe we can talk about some of the other species. One that was particularly interesting, I was looking through some even past work that you've done, Sitha, and it seems like the yellow-headed temple turtle is another one that's kind of maybe doesn't get as much attention, but is also kind of in potentially some kind of a bad situation conservation-wise. And what is kind of known about the temple turtles in Cambodia, and what's sort of the current status, I guess?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I did some research, especially in the southwest of Cambodia, and I think this species is one of my favorite turtles. It's beautiful, and I feel sorry for the species because they've been really a target species for traders and traffickers. And every year I think we found some of the animal end up in the trade, and I think the species in population really declining because not much conservation attention put into this specification, and we found that in the along the coastal area, flooded forests, flooded mangroves, Maluka forest, the type of this good habitat for the species that we should put more effort to conserve the species. And although we haven't done much since then, but per confiscation reports, we feel that this species is going down a lot. That we need as a conservationist, total conservationist or funding opportunities to put more effort to conserve this species. I think Christel has something to say about that.
No, I agree with what you're saying, Sitha. I think what is needed for that species and for many other species in Cambodia, if we're talking turtles, is just population densities and assessments of how many are there left, where are they, because the trade is is still so big here in Cambodia, and so many species are not showing up on the trade anymore, which is scary to me, because if you don't see them on the trade, then that means they're not being found, because people don't dig very deep to try to find certain species. They take whatever they see most of. And so ACCB has an assurance colony of 14 yellow temple turtles, but of those 14, all come from the trade, but there's only 4 females, and only 2 of those are of reproductive age and size, and they are not breeding. So we obviously, we're trying very hard, and we hope that will be successful next year. We hope is all we can do. We can't make them breed. They've been through so much getting to us. The whole illegal trade is so messy that by the time animals get to us, they sometimes need years before they start reproducing. But yeah, it's not going well for the species. I don't believe. I'm really concerned about the species, and I think, like Sitha mentioned, it's important to start finding out what is happening in the wild. Where are the animals, and how many are there left? While we at the ACCB continue to try to breed the species so that we can build up a head start colony, and we can start reintroducing back into protected areas. And we are for other species, but for this species we just haven't been successful yet.
Right. Yeah, right. And on the subject of like doing more surveys to like tell like how well these animals are actually doing in the wild, I'm interested in whether you guys know about the status of the black marsh turtle, the Seaman Rachiella crassicolis, because that's a very cryptic species and it's hard to assess. I wonder if you guys know anything more about them, how they're doing in Cambodia.
I'm going to look at Sitha. Sitha is the in situ specialist here. We have them at the center. We have a couple of them at ACCB, and we had one female drop an egg this year, but it was in the water. So hopefully next breeding season, it was also at the very end of the season. So hopefully she might still have eggs and drop them in sand, but hopefully next year that could be a first for ACCB to breed a species and then start a colony and have animals starting to be able to release. But yeah, Sitha, I'm leaving it up to you to talk about the in situ situation for the species.
Yeah, thank you. I think a lot of turtle species in Cambodia are being really. There are not many attention to do more effort to conserve the other species rather than the a few species we are working on, and I think the other NGOs or maybe the other donors should start doing that. Otherwise, it might be too late. For example, the grassicolis species is so rare. Throughout my research, many years of research in Cambodia, the grassicolis is the most rarest turtle I can say, because the species that I capture very little, and their habitat is really destructed by many kind of activity like the agriculture, the pollution, and throughout my research in Cambodia, like I capture only I think less than 5 individuals of them, and from only 2 locations in the southwest of Cambodia. But I'm sure there will be somewhere else. But like Christel mentioned, the more turtle in the wild, you might find them more in the trade. So if you look into the trade report, you don't really see these species in the trade, or you don't see these species. Many of these species are being sold in the market or in like food store or something like that. we don't really see them. Many of them, rarely, just few individual, and they kind of so rare. And I think in in terms of the habitat destruction, the beauty of the species, and the less concentration on the species conservation, I think we should put more conservation intervention into that as well.
Yeah. I think that the behavior of the species is not helping. I mean, we have them at the center, but they never come out of the water. Rarely, if they're out of the water, we know something is up. They're just not. There's so much underwater, and really trying to also, I think, hide in the mud when they can a little. So they're very elusive. Even if they would be around, you wouldn't see much of them compared to certain other species who really like to be basking on the water edge. So I think it's a combination of many factors, but definitely completely agree with what Sitha is saying.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of these are species I think that don't maybe get as much attention, but yeah, Christel sort of brought up in discussing kind of preparing for the podcast, the need to kind of update the kind of statuses of a lot of these species that are not as well known maybe to the public, but just in general, right? We don't have a lot of good baseline data to work with for many species in Cambodia and just in general. We were talking a few weeks ago to Brian Horn, who works with the IUCN, the specialist group, and the status assessments. And I mean, he brought up the fact that for a lot of species, there's just really no sort of historic baseline and no current baseline. And so it makes things really kind of difficult to assess. And like you're saying, we're only as good as our ability to search for the turtles. And if they're buried in mud that's really kind of impossible to get down in there, you might not have an idea really at all to the population status. And even with doing we've been doing pond turtle work up here for about a month at the Turtle Conservancy, and in a small stretch of river, it could seem like there's no pond turtles in there, and you take some traps out, and we pull out 15 in a little stretch. So even the pond, I mean, that's nowhere near, but it's just kind of an interesting. You really have to kind of attack things from all angles if you want to understand where species are, and it could be an effort. I think that takes a kind of a massive amount of people and kind of logistical, especially when you're dealing with it on the scale of like a whole country. I can't really imagine what sort of mobilizing kind of efforts to work with. It's incredible some of the stuff that both of you have been able to kind of do. How about some of you mentioned kind of the national parks and getting species released into protected areas. And I noticed it seems like there are a good deal of sort of national parks and protected spaces in Cambodia. Are these still strongholds for the turtles? Or are these getting kind of poached as well? Or what is kind of the level of sort of protection there?
I think there's definitely the protection is there. Ministry of Environment is working hard there with their rangers patrolling the area. The different NGOs that are working and conservation organizations that are helping managing these areas are really trying very hard to protect the areas. But the trade is big. There's poaching going on. And I think also, like we're talking about at the moment, I'm working with Sitha on augmentation, reintroduction of captive bred and had started elongated tortoises in the Testudo elongata in one of these areas. And we know there's records of the species being there historically and even more recently, but you don't see them. And the thing with the tortoises especially, you walk past them, they hide. You walk with dogs, people find them, they pick them up. It's really easy to pick them up. We get a lot of our elongata these days still from people that are working in the fields, and they're with family and friends and others, and they pick up the turtles or the tortoises and they bring them to us and they say, I don't want to take it from the wild, but if I wouldn't have taken it, my neighbor, my friend, someone else would have taken it and they would have eaten it. So I think it's still very, very big. And yeah, we wouldn't be reintroducing animals if we weren't sure or pretty sure that we could protect them and it was safe where we were going to bring them. But that being said, I think even the wildlife sanctuaries, what it's more called here in Cambodia than the national park, they're very, very much without turtles. I think even there, the turtles at the moment, populations have been decreased significantly over the years.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's sort of, I guess, the situation in a lot of places, even in the United States, to a certain extent, a lot of places have been sort of just wiped out, kind of in total. It's concerning and not good. How about kind of maybe we can talk a little bit about the experience of sort of doing field work, and maybe for both of you, if you've had sort of a favorite kind of field excursion or something that stands out, something that was particularly interesting you kind of learned on a trip or something like that. It's always interesting to hear that, but maybe if you want to, whoever can.
Well, Sitha and I, we were earlier this year, we were up in the field together. I don't spend much time in the field. Most of our work is obviously ex situ, and the field work that we're doing is going out to rescue or release animals. But got a week with Sitha in the field, which was good fun, working on our Elongata project. My field work with turtles is more based in Madagascar when I was working for TSA in Madagascar, which was, it's amazing. Even though numbers of turtles are decreasing so much, you're still actually encountering wild turtles, at least in the area where I was based. And there's nothing better than actually just seeing a wild turtle in its natural habitat, for any wildlife really. But yeah, my field work is very limited. I think Sitha has much more interesting stories to tell than I have.
Thank you, Krishna. Thank you, Michael. I think I have many different story in the field and very interesting. But one interesting field experience I would like to raise here is that in 2014 when we had a group of young biologists, and we went up on to the 2 weeks field research up in the Cardamom Mountain. We had I think it's been a task. It was like a task trip. We have to walk across the mountain. We spent something like more than 10 days, keep walking every day, and then for the 3 days we had our food of like ruined by the formalin. Because we the food and more formalin together, so we ended up with no food. We need to send our people back to the village to get the food, and then going up to the mountain again. And the trip, the field research was to find presence of the malaria impressor in the cardamom. So after like 2 weeks in the mountain, in the forest, we couldn't find any individual of them. But luckily, the last day we went to the village at the bottom of the mountain. There was a villager had the species in his house. So it's like the whole 2 weeks nothing. But we at the last day we found the turtle in the village. So it was like it been a task field trip, but it was a successful one, because at least we really know that the species is in the cardamom. So from there, we start having some conservation activities with Conservation International. So it was like tough and fun and very good. And we can identify the species for the Cardamom Mountain.
That's that's I guess frustrating, but also really good to find something, right? But to do all the work and then to have it kind of the last thing, right? Exciting, but mixed feelings about the whole trip. That's that is cool. I think that there's always some interesting kind of experiences and just talking to everyone, you get sort of different kind of sort of stories and all that. How about kind of maybe an interesting turtle experience or something that was kind of strange, like a behavior or something you witnessed, or it could be in the field or anything. It's just, is there something that stands out turtle wise, like actually natural history or biology wise? That might be a tough one to answer.
I think about that.
It's just
sorry, nothing comes to mind immediately.
I think I just want to say, like, I used to tell Christel that about the Osamis grandis. It really
that's a good story.
maybe at one time I went to the in the field very long. Right now it's like a wildlife sanctuary. We did a lot of trapping in the rivers, in the wetlands, and then we didn't catch any individual. But one day we went to like a natural pond that it get dry in the dry season, and when it rain, it just fill up like in one heavy rain. So I haven't expected the pond would have that turtle, because I didn't put the trap there. But at one night we went there looking for frog, and then suddenly we found two grandies in the pond. It like just swimming in the pond, and because the water is just very new from the rain, you can water like about my size, like almost 1 meter deep. But I can see the turtle all the way to the bottom. And then when I pick them up, I can see like they are on the carapace, the plastron full of clay. I feel like, I think that the species really just emerging from the ground, because from the first start of the rain, so all the clay was just still there.
Right.
So Cambodia, for those that don't know this, there's areas in Cambodia that have like very seasonal ponds. They're called chapangs, but they're seasonal water holes. So after the first rains, when the soil is still very dry, the areas just flood and create these beautiful ponds in otherwise very dry habitat during the dry season. So the habitat is during the raining season is lush and green and full of water and almost impassable by cars or motorbikes. But then in dry season, it completely dries out and almost all vegetation dies off. And that's where these turtles probably just kind of hide in the mud to just kind of get through their dry season, because there is no water anywhere, because the area is so arid these times of the year. And while you were saying that, I was thinking of a situation for me. So I've seen a lot of turtles come through the trade, both in Cambodia but also in Madagascar. And one thing that stands out for me is that the healing ability that turtles have in general. Like if they're sick, they're really sick. If you see they're sick, they're really sick, and it's hard to pull them through. But they're so resilient as well. In Cambodia, we've fortunately don't see many turtles being really injured. occasionally turtles with fish hooks. But then while I was working in Madagascar, we did come across more turtles that were having carapace fractures. And it takes years, of course, to heal, but it does heal. And also some of the turtles that I see here, or tortoises, especially that have, like the elongated tortoises that live in these areas that get so dry during the dry season. There's a lot of forest fires, and if you see how they survive those fires, I find that really amazing about turtles. Their ability to heal is really awesome. I mean, it's really sad that they get to a situation where the period of them being captured and being confiscated is so long that they are in so poor state by the time they get to wherever they're being rescued in whatever country that is. The general survival ability of most turtle species is with the right care is pretty significant.
Yeah, just to add to Christel on that, like I think some turtle species are so good in healing themselves from natural damage. For example, the forest fire, especially the elongator. They are so tough animal, standing with fire, seasonal fire every year. I caught almost 200 individual in Laos, where I try to relocate them, capture and relocate them from the reservoir. And I think more than 10 individuals being so much they stuck on the cell, especially on the carapace. In one of the elongator, the top cell almost completely gone, but it's just he just survived and then heal themselves. Like I can see like the one side of the top, like I just like go in and out like that, just like completely it amazing how they can withstand the natural fire and healing themselves from the injury.
Adults, especially, I think that the juveniles they're too small, too soft still. But once they're a decent size, and their shell the carapace is hardened and the plastron is hardened, they're really tough. But on that note, there's other species that aren't as much, like the Mekong snail-eating turtles, Malaemus, Subtriuga. They are not doing so good in captivity, for example. They're extremely sensitive to shell rot. So those animals that we see from the trade coming to us, they really often have a lot of shell rot and severe shell rot too. And then it's very tricky to find that happy medium between treating shell rot and not causing more stress that would then activate more shell rot. So I think it's a little bit species specific as well, but in general, I think turtles are so resilient.
Yeah, it's an interesting point too, and I think even potentially some could be sort of a talking point for people and why they should care, because there's a lot I think we can learn scientifically about how that sort of healing ability works, and I know even some stuff has been done with that, kind of looking at different ways to harness vasoconstriction and other sort of methods turtles use to heal in human medicine. And obviously, so in conservation, I feel like a lot of times, at least I'm trying to justify what we're doing with turtles in the sense how it kind of trickles down to people. And I think it typically works, but that's, I think we can start to sort of wrap up, but maybe just a few last kind of sort of questions here is kind of, I guess, what are maybe the major sort of threats facing Cambodia's turtles, and what are sort of more pressing questions for the future that are kind of interesting right now?
Sitha, you want to do this, or you want me to? Who's gonna say something?
So I can start with this first, Christel, and then you can add more, and I missed something. So, per our experience working with the total conservation in Cambodia, I think there are many kind of threats that would reduce the population, or maybe population of others, all the species. I mean, but also it depend on the habitat and the species as well, because a lot of species they inhabit at different habitats. Some live in the forest, some in the lake or river. So, but I can say that sand mining is one of the main issue that is especially really threatening to our turtles. I think many turtle species, and especially our Batagur affinis and contour and social turtles, and also we have the habitat destruction, the land grabbing, and that the kind of activity that not really under our control, and it kind of sensitive. But I can say it really a kind of a threat we should look into the future to solve that kind of issue. And we have a lot of still going on illegal huntings, using stiff like for example electrofishing. That's also the main problem for many turtle species in Cambodia. And we have flooded forest cutting, loggings, that the kind of threat we have been facing right now. And we recently there is a trend of the habitat loss, especially wetlands. Uh, yeah, Richard.
Yeah, I think it comes down to turtles all over the world habitat facing similar threats: habitat loss, sand mining, the higher power dams in to a sense as well, overexploitation, really overharvesting is a big problem. I don't think there's much to add to what Sitha said. To that extent, I think it's a problem that turtles and tortoises all over the world face. And then in terms to I guess a focus of research for Cambodia in particular, I think it's very important to one, I think, get more Cambodian conservationists, young conservationists interested in turtle conservation, and there should be many more, and then get a good sense of what are the populations doing, what are actual numbers, what is all we're doing now is a very good estimate and guess of what is going on, and we know populations are declining based on trade numbers, etc. But we don't have any population density numbers updated we don't have a historical baseline, and we don't have a current baseline. And I think for any work that we're doing in situ and ex situ conservation, to know where are the turtles and in what numbers are they, what are the strongholds in the country at the moment, is very important. And if we could get more Cambodian conservationists, young conservationists interested in this to tackle that, the research, that would be really, really good. I think that's a big need, I think.
Yeah, thank you. I think I just want to add that one more area of the research. I think if we can do research looking at behavior of the people in terms of total conservation, total consumption, and probably also trading, and that might be the missing information
Very good point.
we might want to look into the future, how people
It's a very good point.
pursue about the total conservation as a maybe.
That and linked to that, I guess, a behavioral change campaign linked to that, the behavioral research of people in Cambodia, human consumption and trade. But yeah, how are we going to change people's behavior?
And Christel, you mentioned too getting more sort of, I guess, scientists within Cambodia working. Are there sort of efforts what are the efforts that exist to do that? I imagine it could be hard in certain circumstances, but kind of are there efforts in place to try to kind of inspire? I mean, personally, I feel like targeting younger kids in kind of the formative years, it seems like that works pretty well in terms of getting them interested, that sort of thing. But I don't know, are there efforts kind of in place to inspire the next generation, or what? How is that?
It's difficult. There is definitely, we in our outreach work are reaching children and try to convey that message a lot. Not only to get them interested in working in conservation, but also in changing behavior. I think a big change that has happened over the years is that there's more and more students in general interested in working in conservation in Cambodia, and in particular in situ conservation work. Perhaps not as much in turtles as we would like, but just the fact that they're working in conservation, want to work in conservation in Cambodia, on especially bird species, is it? I think the Royal University of Phnom Penh is really good in that sense with promoting their biology course and conservation studies that are available, but it is limited. I think we also should remember that Cambodia is a very young country in the sense that there's a lot of young people right now, so this would be the right moment to try to get people more interested in turtle conservation.
Right.
You want to add something to that, Sitha?
Yeah, I think you cover most of everything. Yeah. No problem.
All right. Well, that works. And then I guess our last sort of question would be, what is one sort of piece of advice you would give to someone that's younger, that's like looking to make, I guess not even, just in general, looking to make sort of turtles or conservation something of a career? What would you say is one piece of advice?
I would say like Christel mentioned, in Cambodia, we don't have many people working on turtles, and I think turtle conservation is one area that would provide a lot of opportunities for research, and it might also be a good opportunity for future career as well. So come and join the field of conservation and biology and doing research on turtles. And it's, from my experience, it's a lot of fun.
To add to that, both in Cambodia, directed at Cambodians, and also just more international. If this is what you want to do, then reach out to people that are already doing it and see how you can help. And if they, volunteer. And that is really difficult in Cambodia because Cambodia is economically a very different situation than other parts of the world. But if you're in that position to volunteer your time, then do that and learn from the people that are in the field, because there's so many people out there that are willing to help mentor and mentor the next generation of turtle conservationists But they need to know that you're interested first. And it's a commitment. It's not something that you occasionally do. You need to be passionate about it. It's not a 9-to-5 job. So passion is really important there, I think.
That's good to know. Sort of, I guess, inspiring research at sort of a local scale, but also having that passion for it, and maybe before trying to start something new, kind of look around and see where you can help. I think those are all great sort of things. And so we also do something, I did forget to mention this, but we have a little, if you guys want to do this, I don't know if you've got, but we do a little trivia round at the end, just sort of for fun and to bring in kind of obscure turtle facts. But that would just be you guys, if either of you have any kind of obscure turtle facts, just kind of right on your head now that you want to ask and see if we kind of can get the answer, just to kind of bring in, just a fun little aspect to this. I did forget to, normally I mentioned it before, but it slipped my mind. But
yeah. So you're asking us to ask you a question about turtles, and you need to see if you know the answer.
Right, sure. Just and make it as obscure as possible. It's just a little fun thing we like to do. But
but you've had so many of those podcasts already. You probably have been asked so many of these questions already.
Occasionally there are repeat questions, but sometimes, most people have got some kind of just weird, wild things, but I don't know. We'll see. But maybe some interesting Cambodian turtle facts or anything. Honestly.
Okay, man. It just like pop up in my mind, like, what is the oldest turtles in the world?
Oh, so would that be like extinct or like current?
Yeah, include the both still there now and extinct.
All right, so both. Well, the age, I can think of the extinct. It's not necessarily agreed upon, but Untesaurus Africanus is one that was, I think that was right prior to kind of the formation of the dermal shell, I guess, and the fusion of axial skeleton with the dermal skeleton. But that it's obviously like debated. I think Captivity was one that was an older family that could be like a really old stem turtle, and Preganachelles is the one that I think of, and Odontochelys. These are all really kind of older extinct turtles. Jack would probably the oldest age-wise.
Oh, oldest age? Well, yeah. If you're speaking more age-wise, that would probably come down to some of the Seychelles or Galapagos, like giant tortoises that, like, at least verified, they're known to live as long as 150 plus years, or some as old as 200 years or so. But once you start hitting those kind of numbers, it's hard to prove. Like, but there is, for certain individuals, they've been in captivity for long enough time that they couldn't be any younger than that. Like,
yeah.
A question you were asking earlier about the counter softshell turtle and its size. You seem to know quite a bit about that. How about your Batagur fitness Edward Molly knowledge on turtle size, adult female?
I 632 millimeters. Is that the record, or 640 millimeters? 64 centimeters.
Possible. I don't know. The female we are having is 55 centimeters, 35 kilo, 36 kilo.
wow.
Sitha, you have a big female as well, sitting at the center. These are old females.
Yeah,
I can check her size. You give me a second.
Yeah, something like around.
While Sitha's talking, I can see. Yeah, I can check it quickly in the records.
I also wonder too, right, prior to exploitation, how big some of them.
Yeah, so our largest female is in carapace length, straight carapace length is 60 centimeters, and her weight is 37 kilo. And she's not overweight. She's a good size. She's a healthy turtle, and she's still growing. She's not that old even. She's one of the head started females that came from WCS.
So how old is she?
She is. Hold on one second. This particular female is from 2006. Born 2006, and then we have a female that is from, I don't know, she's from 1960, 1950. We have no idea how old she is, but she's definitely old. And she is 56 centimeters carapace length, straight carapace length.
That's impressive. She got that size.
Sorry, say that again. You broke up. Can you say that again? You broke up a
little.
little.
Oh yeah, that's impressive that she got to that size within 16 years. Like, that's massive. That's a lot of growth.
Yeah, she's obviously head started, right? So this is a captive female all her life, whereas the other female that I'm talking about, she was that size when she arrived. So that's a female that is at least 60 years old, and is that similar size. And from that animal we know about female.
It seems like he stopped growing, the one with around the egg with around 60 years.
Yeah, she has reached her size, but the younger female is probably still growing a bit, and she's a good 60 centimeters.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's difficult to measure them because we don't have proper calipers that are that large. So it's also, it might be off by, you know, a little bit, but not by much, for sure, not by much.
Huh. Wow. That is incredible. The amount of time that it's put on. I guess you could divide the size by the time and see per year how much. That's a ridiculous amount of growth. Very, very interesting. But that's good.
We've been measuring those animals. Yeah, we've been measuring those animals annually since they've been at ACCB. So we also can see how much they've been growing since they arrived at the center, which is nice. We do that with all our turtles. Actually, it's good to be able to see that progress and development that they go through.
Right. Well, if I don't know if anyone has sort of last thoughts, but I know it's getting late for you guys, so we can sort of wrap things up. But again, thank you so much for coming on, and both Christel and Sitha, thank you for talking to us today. I think it's been really interesting sort of to hear a lot just about the work you're doing that is it's more, I guess, public, but also the stuff that doesn't get it covered as much with some of the other species, and hearing about your experiences. Thank you so much for giving your time, and we really enjoyed it, I think.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And hope to see you guys at TSA. All right.
Yeah,
so for
we
everyone.
will.
Okay. Well.
All right.